There are people dying now, so give me the money.
You're watching One on One. We're talking with Sir Bob Geldof. But let's just get a little bit into what drew you to music in the first place in the early years. What made you go in that direction?
Small boy, lonely, miserable. Coming in from school late October evenings, cold house, going to the shops, buying your food, cooking it, putting the coal in the plastic bucket, lighting a fire. No TV, no phone. Turn on the radio, read a book. So there you go. Rock and roll, books. I didn't do sport, but it seemed to me that what this language was doing was absolutely articulating everything I could possibly want to say, and as we now know, doing it brilliantly. It is the great art of our time. It is the great culture of our time. There's no question of that. And I drifted around then after school. I did various jobs. And finally, I arrived back in Ireland and I was going to start a newspaper. I'd been working on an underground paper in Canada. I was the music editor and circulation manager. It was the time of underground papers. Rolling Stone was not a big magazine then. I'd saved up £2,000. The Mounties got their man. I was an illegal immigrant. I was shipped out. I loved Vancouver. I reapplied for, staying there. When I was waiting for my papers, I was going to start two newspapers. I wanted rock and roll, but it wouldn't work in Ireland, so I'd start, a free ads paper. That would get me money to start the rock and roll paper, and, we'd see what happened. While I was doing that, I thought for, Saturday afternoon, fun, me and my mates would get together and play music we couldn't hear on the radio. Suddenly, girls and people clapped me for the first time in my life. I remember it very well, this classroom with 30 people. And they clapped me. And halfway through the gig, a girl came over and said she wanted to go to bed with me. Now, I'd read about this stuff in England, I thought that girls don't do that. This doesn't happen. And I thought, this is the career for me. So that was it.
So once your career did take off and you became a sort of mega band, how did you cope with the wine, the women, the booze?
Very easily. What's the problem?
So it wasn't a big adjustment in terms of lifestyle? Were you able to handle it?
It was a major adjustment in my lifestyle, thank God.
But I mean, in the sense that, how were you able to sort of reconcile what was later a sort of more mature person and that craziness from early on?
I don't think there was a reconciliation. I don't think there was any immaturity about it. I came from poverty. Let me tell you, being rich is better. I couldn't get shagged. I was getting shagged. I was a young guy, I did say when I was asked in the first interview in Britain, what I wanted to get out of this, and I said I want to get rich, get famous and get laid, which is the sole quote in the Oxford Book of Quotations. But I explained why, as I just have to you. The fame thing, I said, is only interesting in that it gives you a platform to talk about other things. It isn't that suddenly you become more sober. All of the songs I wrote, which were hits, all of them are about something. Rat Trap, I worked in an abattoir in Ireland, and it was about this claustrophobic world I described. It just so happens that 1,000 million kids in Britain and the rest of the world thought the same. I Don't Like Mondays was about this terrible Californian nihilistic amorality that was sort of happening with the first of these school shootings. They were never about stuff. They were always me looking around and going, that's crap, And I still did, if I was asked to speak at some thing that I agreed to, I'd do it. So, I did all the Amnesty International gigs, in the early days. None of that was a problem. The two always coincided.
No, it's funny. I mean, I'm from that generation that was influenced by the music of your band and others that were coming up. It was more rebellious. Then suddenly you appeared on TV and you're demanding justice for Africa. You're demanding
Well,
something
is that
different.
not rebellious?
No, but in the sense that it was a surprise to have, if you like, a pop star come out and do that in that way. You were very vocal about it and obviously very well quoted. What, when you look back on it, Band-Aid and the follow-up and so on, did it go in the direction you wanted it to?
Yeah.
Did it achieve what you wanted it to?
Yes, it did, because, Michael Burke's report on the BBC was absolutely brilliant reporting. I mean, it's a benchmark piece, I think, at this stage. And it really had a resonance throughout the country. I just thought it was me. I responded. My band wasn't doing well. It seemed logical to get a bunch of guys you met over the last 10 years who were now stars themselves to do this song. Well, what happened was that the disgust and shame and rage which I felt was precisely what everybody else felt. And so this little record became the focus for all of that. Preposterously, of course, I was thinking, a piece of plastic is the price of a life. You know, there's something wrong. Very quickly I was talking about the Butter Mountains. I mean, within 2 weeks you saw me on television with Thatcher saying, you know, that bit where I'm just saying, you know, about those things, and she's arguing with me. So that night she asked me to come over to Downing Street and have a whiskey. So immediately I was engaged at the political level in this, because so that's the only, what causes, poverty is political. I understood really rapidly that while this was a famine of biblical proportions, as the television said, we had never been wealthier or healthier. We were wallowing in surplus. And I said, I think to die of want in a world of surplus is not only intellectually absurd, it is morally repulsive. And so famine, ill health, lack of education, conflict, corruption are symptoms of poverty. But in the Cold War period, all you could deal with was the symptoms. You couldn't alter the structures of poverty, which are political. And so Band-Aid set about doing that.
But you also then discovered that politics really makes what you were trying to do that much harder, having to argue over the VAT for the money raised, having to deal with...
They were sideshows. I mean, and really, the press made an issue out of those. They were complete sideshows. What I did was go to Africa and see stuff, and then I saw there was a cartel operating at Port Sudan, and that needed to be freed up. So the only way to bust a cartel is by trucks. Okay, we bought trucks. I mean, it's very direct. Turned out that I could go to America to see Reagan and get him to lift the cartels. That happened. So suddenly you could see there was a willingness. If it was pointed out to people a way through things, they'd do it if it didn't cost very much, or you could point out the upside of it costing.
Live 8 was the next step. Were you able to, again, achieve what you wanted to with that? Again,
yes, totally.
The media was sort of trying to get all over it and have a different perspective sometimes.
Well, it's great that what's incredible is, again, as I say, the romance, the resonance of Live Aid encaptured 2 generations. It was taught in schools as civics. It was held up as an exemplar of collective action for the greater good. Other views could say it was the individual, working in cooperation. You could use it for whatever you liked. But Resonate it did, without any record of the event. It was never seen again on television. There were no records of it. There were no videos, nothing. And when we brought out the DVD, because it was appearing on this new thing called the internet, we brought it to stop the bootlegs. It became instantly the biggest selling and fastest selling DVD of all time. I was taken aback.
Is it an increasing pressure on you now to, A, feel the frustration of having to go through this process, but then also having to try to continue to achieve something, to achieve results in this area that you...
Well, yes, that is true, because once you have the policy, you then have to get the commitment. Once you have the commitment, you have to get it paid for. Explaining that to people is difficult. They think there's a eureka moment. Well, you didn't make poverty history. Of course not. It's a strapline, but we did begin. That is a battle, and it's wearisome, and you must carry people with you and threaten. But, it would help if the Middle East came on board. They are completely opaque in what they say we're very generous. Prove it. Show me. If you look at what the Arab Development Bank for Africa gives, it's 200 million. It's pathetic. If you look at what OPEC has given over 30 years, 3.5 billion from OPEC, from the Development Fund, in 30 years. And these are their neighbours. These are their ancient trading partners. And thankfully, Africa is geostrategic for the first time since the 1500s, really, because it's swimming in oil. This is a wholly different new world, and the Middle East must get on top of it. They have strategic interests in this area. They must do it. America doesn't want the failed states of Africa with them being, training spots for Al-Qaeda. The Middle East must get on top of this.
When I hear your passion on this, I wonder sometimes, would it serve you better to be in politics?
Why? I am.
Yeah, indirectly, but to actually...
Well, I don't want to stand for election. That's it. I'll say what I like. I'm not beholden to anyone. If you don't like it, I don't care. And what would I be, being one voice among 650? How much more powerful to stand outside? And I never use it or abuse it. I never think of anyone saying, yeah, that's right. Half of them can't stand me. More than half. it's one thing I really, truly know about. I'm not going to crap. I have an opinion like you down in the pub about Joe Blow or this situation. But there's no more validity than Joe Blow. On this one, genuinely, I know about 20 years. So I can be listened to. I'm taken relatively seriously. Plus, there's a constituency there that I can speak on behalf of. So what are you talking about?
What do you want to be remembered for, Bob? What do you think you'll be
Not
remembered
interested. Not interested in being remembered. You know, it's over. Gone. You know, blessed oblivion. Bang. Gone. You know, remember, who cares? Nothing, you know.
for? While you're still a force in the living world, we wish you luck. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.